Michel
Did you bring
Belmont
it?
died on January 12,
Let's go.
2003, at the age of 76. 3 weeks before his death, confined to a hospital bed in Nice, he called a journalist he'd known for decades and made an unusual request. "I need to tell you about Brigitte before I go. Someone needs to know what it was really like." The journalist arrived with a recorder. Michel spoke for 8 hours over 2 days, his voice weakening, but his memory sharp. He'd been Brigitte Bardot's personal bodyguard from 1959 to 1969, the most turbulent decade of her life. For 34 years after leaving her employ, he'd maintained absolute silence, professional discretion, contractual obligation, personal loyalty. But dying changes priorities, and Michel had carried these stories long enough. What he revealed wasn't gossip. It was testimony, a first-hand account of what it cost to be Brigitte Bardot when the cameras stopped rolling. Michel Beaumont was hired in March 1959 after a particularly disturbing incident. A fan had broken into Brigitte's Paris apartment while she slept. He'd stood at the foot of her bed for who knows how long before she woke up screaming. The intruder fled, but the psychological damage was done. Brigitte couldn't sleep, couldn't feel safe, developed an obsessive habit of checking locks and windows multiple times before bed. Her studio insisted she hire professional security. Michel, a former military police officer with an impeccable reputation, was recommended. Their first meeting was brief. Brigitte looked him over with exhausted eyes and said, "I need someone who can keep people away from me, all people, all the time. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am. Even when I ask you not to?" That question should have been his first warning about what this job would require. Michel's interview with the journalist began with a clarification. "People think bodyguards protect celebrities from danger. That's partly true, but my real job, the thing I actually did for 10 years, was protect Brigitte from the world, and sometimes protect her from herself." He described his typical day. 6 a.m. Arrive at Brigitte's residence. Check perimeter. Clear any fans or photographers who'd camped overnight. 7 a.m. Escort her to breakfast. Stand outside the cafe, monitoring everyone who entered. 9 a.m. Drive her to wherever she needed to be. Set, photo shoot, meeting, clear the route beforehand. Throughout the day, position himself between Brigitte and everyone else. Intercept approach attempts. Create physical barriers with his body. Midnight or later, return her home. Check the apartment. Stay until she confirmed she felt safe enough to sleep. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. For 10 years, the physical threats were constant, Michel told the journalist. But they weren't the hardest part. He described the letters. Thousands of them. Most were harmless fan mail, but mixed in were threats. Detailed descriptions of what men wanted to do to her. Promises to teach her a lesson for being too sexual, too free, too visible. Stalkers who sent photos of themselves outside her home. Letters that included locks of their own hair. Marriage proposals that turned threatening when ignored. One man sent her a package every week for 2 years, Michel recalled. Always the same thing, a white rose and a note saying soon. Just that word, soon. We never found out who he was or what he meant, but it terrified her. The worst part, these weren't rare incidents. This was normal. This was daily life for Brigitte Bardot. But the physical security was only part of Michel's job. What people don't understand is that fame at that level, being Brigitte Bardot, it's not just dangerous, it's dehumanizing. My job wasn't just keeping her safe from violence, it was preserving whatever humanity she had left. He described walking through crowds with her. The way people would grab at her clothes, her hair, her body, treating her like public property. I'd create a barrier with my arms, trying to keep space around her, but they'd reach over me, under me, around me, grabbing, touching, taking, and the whole time, she'd keep that smile on her face, keep moving, keep performing. Once, after a particularly aggressive crowd, Michael asked if she was okay. "I'm fine," she said automatically. Then quieter. "I stopped being a person to them a long time ago. I'm just a thing they think they own." Michelle said that moment, that casual acceptance of her own objectification, haunted him for decades. The interview revealed incidents that had never been made public. In 1961, a photographer bribed a hotel employee for a key to Brigitte's room. He was inside with a camera when she returned from dinner. Michael heard her scream, broke down the door, and found the photographer hiding in her bathroom. The man claimed he just wanted an exclusive candid shot. Brigitte didn't press charges. The studio convinced her it would be bad publicity. "That's when I understood," Michelle said. She wasn't protected by the law like normal people. Her fame made her vulnerable in ways that couldn't be prosecuted, because they'd always find a way to blame her for it. Another incident, 1963. A fan followed Brigitte's car for 30 miles, trying to force them off the road. Michelle managed to lose him, but Brigitte was shaking so badly she couldn't get out of the car when they arrived at their destination. She just sat there, hyperventilating, saying, "I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this," over and over. Michelle called her assistant. They canceled that day's commitments. He drove her to her countryside cottage and stayed while she cried for 3 hours. "That was the 4th time I'd seen her completely break down," he said. "By then, I'd stopped being surprised. The breakdowns were more frequent than the calm." But Michael's most devastating testimony was about the toll of constant surveillance. She couldn't go anywhere, do anything, be anyone except Brigitte Bardot, movie star, and it was killing her. He described her attempts at normalcy, wanting to walk on the beach. Impossible. Photographers would materialize within minutes. Wanting to browse a bookstore. Impossible. Crowds would form, making it a spectacle. Wanting to have coffee with a friend. Impossible. Every conversation was interrupted by autograph seekers. She was a prisoner, Michelle said. A very famous, very wealthy prisoner, but a prisoner nonetheless. One day in 1965, Brigitte begged him, "Can we just drive somewhere random? Somewhere nobody knows me? Just for an hour?" They drove 3 hours outside Paris to a tiny village. Brigitte wore a headscarf and sunglasses, no makeup. For 30 glorious minutes, she walked through the village market like a normal person, bought vegetables, chatted with vendors, was anonymous. Then someone recognized her. Within 10 minutes, they were mobbed. They had to run back to the car. She cried the entire drive back, Michelle recalled. Not dramatic crying, just silent tears, like she was mourning something she'd lost and could never get back. The suicide attempts were the hardest part of Michelle's job. "I wasn't hired to prevent suicide, but it became part of my responsibilities anyway." He described finding Brigitte unconscious in her bathroom in 1960, calling the ambulance, riding with her to the hospital, watching them pump her stomach. The doctors asked what happened. "I told them accidental overdose. Everyone knew it was a lie. But that was the story we told." It happened again in 1962 and 1968. Each time, I thought, this is it. This is the time I'll be too late. And I was terrified, not just of losing her, but of failing at the one job I'd been hired to do, keep her safe. But how do you keep someone safe from themselves, from a life that's become unbearable? Michelle's relationship with Brigitte was complicated by the intimacy of constant proximity. "I saw her more than anyone else in her life. I was there for every breakdown, every fight, every moment of vulnerability. You can't maintain that kind of proximity without developing feelings." He paused. "Not romantic feelings, something deeper, more protective. Like a brother, maybe, or a father. I cared about her as a person, not as Brigitte Bardot, the commodity. That care made the job harder, because he saw what fame was doing to her, watched her deteriorate mentally and physically, witnessed the industry consuming her, and I couldn't stop it. I could keep stalkers away, but I couldn't protect her from the system that was destroying her. That wasn't my job. The helplessness ate at him. Watching someone you care about suffer while being powerless to change the fundamental cause. The journalist asked about specific celebrities or industry figures. Michelle was careful. I'm not here to expose affairs or name names. That's not the point. The point is the system. But he did share one story. A famous director who'd worked with Brigitte multiple times showed up at her home, uninvited at 2 a.m., drunk, demanding to see her. Michelle blocked the door. The director became aggressive, using his industry power as leverage. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do to your career? I don't have a career, Michelle said calmly. I have a job, and my job is keeping you out. The director tried to push past. Michael didn't move. He finally left, shouting threats. The next day, he called Brigitte's agent, trying to get me fired, said I was obstructionist and unprofessional. Brigitte kept him on, told the director to never contact her again. That was one of the few times she actually set a boundary, Michael said. Most of the time she just accepted whatever happened to her. The most revealing testimony came when Michelle described Brigitte's private moments. People saw this confident, sexual, powerful woman on screen. In private, she was the opposite. Fragile, terrified, constantly apologizing for existing. He described her rituals, checking and rechecking locks before bed. Sometimes 15-20 times, sleeping with lights on, because darkness felt too vulnerable. Keeping bags packed, just in case I need to disappear. She lived in constant fight-or-flight mode, Michelle explained. Every unexpected noise was a threat. Every stranger was potentially dangerous. She couldn't relax. Ever. One night, Michelle heard breaking glass from inside her apartment. He rushed in to find Brigitte on the floor, surrounded by shattered mirror pieces. I couldn't look at it anymore, she said. The her was Brigitte Bardot. The image, the reflection she'd come to hate. Michelle cleaned up the glass while Brigitte sat on her bed, staring at nothing. He said, nothing. Sometimes, there was nothing to say. The job took a toll on Michael too. I stopped having relationships, stopped having a normal life. My entire existence revolved around protecting her. And after a while, I couldn't separate myself from the role. He developed hypervigilance, scanning every room for threats, evaluating every person as a potential danger. Even now, 30 years later, I can't walk into a restaurant without noting exits and assessing people. It never goes away. His own therapist told him he'd developed vicarious trauma, absorbing Brigitte's fear and stress until it became his own. Protecting her cost me my own sense of safety, but I'd do it again. Someone had to care about her as a person, not a product. Michelle left Brigitte's employ in 1969, shortly before she retired from film. She was starting to build a different life, one that didn't require constant security, and I was burning out. We both knew it was time. Their parting was simple. She thanked him. He wished her well. They didn't stay in touch. It was too painful. I represented a decade she wanted to forget, and she represented a job that had consumed me. But he followed her life from a distance, watched her retreat from the public, build her animal sanctuary, find peace. I was happy for her. Relieved. She'd survived something that kills most people, fame at that level. She'd escaped, and Michelle had helped her survive long enough to escape. That mattered to him. The journalist asked the question everyone wanted answered. What do you want people to know about Brigitte Bardot? Michelle was quiet for a long time. That she was human. That sounds obvious, but people forget. They see the image, the sex symbol, the goddess, the icon, and they forget there's an actual person under all that. A person who was scared, who cried, who wanted simple things to be safe, to be left alone, to be normal. Fame robbed her of normalcy. And everyone who contributed to her fame, the fans, the photographers, the studio, the public, they're all complicit in what it cost her. I spent 10 years protecting her from individuals, but the real threat was collective. It was the culture that created Brigitte Bardot and then consumed the woman underneath. Do you think she's forgiven the world? I don't know. But I hope she's forgiven herself for surviving when it meant becoming someone else, for choosing herself when everyone said she was being selfish, for escaping when it meant destroying the thing everyone said she should be grateful for. Michelle Beaumont died 3 weeks after giving that interview. The journalist published excerpts in a French literary magazine. The full transcript was donated to a film history archive with instructions that it be made public after Brigitte's death. Brigitte never commented publicly on Michel's testimony, but she sent flowers to his funeral with a simple note: "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else only saw her." The bodyguard who protected Brigitte Bardot for 10 years finally spoke about what he saw. And what he saw wasn't glamour, wasn't fantasy, wasn't the life everyone imagined. He saw a woman under siege, living in constant fear, performing sanity while falling apart. He saw the cost of fame measured in panic attacks, suicide attempts, and shattered mirrors. He saw the world's most desired woman feel fundamentally unsafe every moment of her life. He saw Brigitte Bardot, the person, not the product, and the person was drowning. Michel spent 10 years building walls between Brigitte and the world, creating space for her to breathe, intercepting the constant invasion. It wasn't enough to save her, but it was enough to help her survive. And decades later, dying in a hospital bed, he wanted the world to know that the woman they'd idolized had suffered more than they could imagine. That fame isn't glamorous. It's traumatic. That being desired by millions while feeling completely unsafe is a special kind of hell. That Brigitte Bardot survived not because fame was wonderful, but in spite of how terrible it was. Michel protected her body for 10 years, but he spent the rest of his life protecting her truth, waiting until the right moment to reveal what it really cost to be the most famous woman in the world. The moment came 34 years after he'd left her employ, and the truth, as always, was harder than the fantasy. But truth, Michel believed, was what Brigitte had always deserved, even if the world had never been willing to give it to her until now.